Good evening, everybody. It's Friday, and it's time for another episode of Hobbservations on the Roads to Liberty Network. I'm Hobbs, and these are my observations. And tonight, we have the pleasure of interviewing the mysterious figure behind the very funny, very entertaining, gun grabbing memes for the tacticool scene. Sir, how are you this evening?
I'm staying strapped so I don't get clapped.
Always a good answer, a great answer. It was a very last minute thing that you agreed to join us here, and by last minute I mean like literally 3 hours ago. I sent you a Facebook message, and you so graciously agreed to come on at the last minute. So I would, on behalf of myself and the rest of the Roads crew, and I'm sure the visitors to our page, I would like to thank you from the bottom of me heart.
Oh, no worries. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So I've been following your page for a little while now. It's very funny, very entertaining. I think back when you were doing the FUD Friday posts, we tried to post as many of them as we can because that shit is just funny, and FUDs don't deserve human rights. But the thing that's really kind of got me interested in talking to you, something you've been doing for the past few days. You have been getting in touch with people on the ground in Hong Kong about getting some much needed supplies that they need out there. So you're calling it hashtag Hong Kong Bing Bong. And I'd just like to, you know how you decided that you were going to do this, and what was the impetus for it.
Yeah, so basically I was on Reddit, just, reading on current events. Saw a bunch of various ways to support the Hong Kong demonstrations. A lot of the donation channels seem to be fairly unvetted. Some of them were kind of shaky, and then a lot of these sites were in, you know, the whole websites were in Chinese, and I can't really read that shit. So did a little digging, and sorry, did a little digging, and try to do some verifying and vetting myself. And and now here we are. I mean, there's definitely people there who there's a lot of volunteer EMS people on the ground there who aren't necessarily participating in political demonstrations. And so I'd figured, regardless of your political views, those people could really use our support, especially since there's some materials they can't really easily obtain in local stores, whether it's by government lockdown or otherwise.
Okay, cool. So, what type of materials are you personally sending, and what would you like once you get the sort of the logistics and the supply line worked out? What sort of things would you want people who may be interested in donating to the cause to send over, and how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the items that I sent over is really just, I guess, a test sample, just to make sure that the people that I'm sending it to aren't scamming the fuck out of me. No, it's just to make sure that it gets where it's needed. It doesn't get held up at customs or anything like that before I invest too much in it. But really, the kind of stuff they need are tourniquets, trauma bandages, um, san- uh, other stuff like hemostatic gauze. Basically the kind of stuff that you would need to treat, pretty urgent injuries and
Right.
stuff of that matter. There were other websites that were asking for like respirators and helmets, and at the time I was concerned that some of these respirators were export controls, so I had to do a lot of digging and ended up talking to some folks at the Department of Commerce just to make sure that they were okay. And turns out they are, but I figure medical supplies are probably much more of a urgent need right now, just because some of these folks are running pretty low. And yeah.
All right, cool. So, if you don't mind, for OPSEC reasons, obviously, like who are you? Well, obviously, not who are you in contact with, but what sort of vetting are you doing? Is this a person who might be connected with like local emergency services, or somebody with Western connections, or anything like that?
Yeah. So the primary channel that I'm looking at right now is I found this Reddit user who had an AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was a volunteer medic. So he posted a verification picture on the Reddit thread. I got in contact with him directly through IMs, and he was able to vet himself further to a satisfactory level. And, and then basically told him, hey, you know what, send me an address. I'll send over a small sample, just make sure that gets through, and then we'll just take it from there. There is a secondary source that I'm vetting right now. Actually, one of the followers of the page recommended I get in touch with the journalist Michael Yan,
Mm-hmm.
who's been covering the Hong Kong protests. So I spoke with him directly on Twitter, and he referred me to another person who I'm having conversations right now, asking for a vetted donation channel where people might be able to provide support in terms of supplies, supplies and legal aid for those who might have been arrested for peacefully demonstrating.
Awesome, awesome. So, you're going to open up the channels once you figure out that everybody is who they say they are, and that the goods are going to, where they say that they're going to. Other than medical supplies, is there any way that people could just get, say, money or food or anything else? Is this going to be done through like a third party proxy, like Amazon or something, or is this going to be like I'm shipping it from my house to some guy halfway around the world?
So that's a good question. The way I see it being played out. So I'm going to be opening up a channel for people to provide basically Amazon funds, in which I would then use those funds to place orders and have them shipped directly from Amazon warehouses, which I think is probably the least riskiest method, because I think Amazon has a system that automatically disallows export controlled items from shipment, and then it gets traced back to an Amazon warehouse instead of like my apartment.
Okay.
And then there's the medic I had a contact with has a PayPal account for direct donations for them to get like respirators and other PPE. He specifically stated that respirators at this point is something that they can relatively easily get. It's really medical equipment that they really need shipped and delivered in from abroad.
Okay, in medical equipment, you went over that earlier. Things like kind of a golden hour emergency things, tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, bandages, pressure dressings, stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like
You know?
that.
Yeah,
Splints, portable litters, that kind of stuff.
yeah. So basically, anything that people that follow a page like yours and mine is going to have on hand laying around, or should have on hand laying around for medical stuff. Okay, so obviously you're doing your homework and your due diligence to make sure that you're not crossing the lines of any export controls or import controls or anything like that to cross the legal lines on our end. But let's talk a little bit about maybe some tinfoil hattery here, some extra legal stuff. Do you see any pushback or any repercussions by the Chinese government or their fellow travelers, ideologically speaking?
Not really. And from my end, I even called the Department of State. I talked to a consular officer over at the U.S. consulate in Hong Kong just to make sure that these activities, if supporting the Hong Kong protests, either through monetary or material donations, is something that's not prohibited by the U.S. Department of State. And I was informed that there's currently no guidelines or regulations prohibiting such activities, and that they should be covered under freedom of expression, which is something that we fortunately have for now, and they unfortunately don't.
Yeah. So one of our followers here, a guy, someone named Kyron Burdine, wants to know what Reddit threads that you're following to get all these informations from.
Yeah, I have a link. Where do you want me to post it?
Well, let's see. You could just we could probably put it down in the comments or something. Post edit or something. I'm not 100% sure how to put things up on your end. Ben, are you there?
Yeah, there it is right there.
There you go.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there you go. You can, Ben, if you could pop that up on screen for anybody to take a look at, that would be absolutely awesome. There we go. Kieran,
Yeah.
There you go, sir.
Yeah. So this is the original thread that I saw. There are some links for monetary and non-monetary donations that people can contribute, and some of these are legal aid foundations and nonprofits that are basically bigger NGOs. And I personally wanted to shy away from those just because I'm not familiar with them, and I'm not sure exactly how the money was going to be used. So I wanted to use a more direct method, and to get things directly to people who are most directly being affected right now.
Awesome. So, excuse me. So right now, you basically got some police forces that are showing, generally speaking, a lot of constraint. I guess all things considered. Some people have been shot, a lot of people have been injured, but it's not another Tiananmen Square type thing going on in Hong Kong at the moment. Just like everywhere else in the world that isn't America, the people in Hong Kong are effectively disarmed. Do you, kind of hate to put this kind of a spin on it, but do you see it coming to a point where people abroad are going to get to the point where they're going to want to, and maybe even try to, send in firearms or other type of advanced weapons, or anything like that, like a World War II airdrop of a crate of Liberator pistols or something? Do you see that happening at all?
I don't have a lot of subject matter expertise or authority to answer that, but personally, I don't really see that happening. Really, I'm willing to venture to guess that probably close to 100% of comments talking about that kind of stuff are comments made for purposes of for for the meme.
Mental masturbation.
Yeah, for the meme value.
Yeah. That's kind of what I get to. I don't really see like a boat full of guns washing up on shore in Hong Kong. I think the Chinese government probably has a pretty tight control of the sea lanes around that area.
Dude, you already got people fucking throwing shade at you. You got this guy saying, "Why are you talking to great value Jeff Goldblum?"
I don't think you sound like Jeff Goldblum, and the profile picture doesn't sound like Jeff Goldblum, or doesn't look like Jeff Goldblum either. But whatever, man. So kind of went by pretty quick there. What other avenues are you pursuing right now to to help anybody, or what would you recommend somebody do who might not have the money or anything like that to help these people out?
Just spread Winnie the Pooh memes. No, but seriously, like there's like a campaign right now to get Overwatch banned from China. They're trying to like meme some of the Overwatch characters to make them pro Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So honestly, like that's probably something that might be worth pursuing, because that's gonna hit Activision Blizzard right in the balls.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Any type of awareness or spreading the message, telling people anything that you can. There's a lot of people out there who are ignorant of what is going on and the gravity of the situation that's going on over there. I talked a couple of weeks ago on our Tuesday show with Nathan. It would essentially be like if Canada decided that they wanted to come down and take over the area around Wall Street, because that is essentially what Hong Kong is to most of Asia. It's the Asian Wall Street. It's the economic financial hub for all of Asia. There's probably more money and wealth in Hong Kong than in the rest of China. And they got a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of the population. And that's just indicative of capitalism versus centrally planned economies. Um, so the situation that's going on over there is a lot more than some asshole in the premiership of China wanting to take over a city because he wants it. There's going to be economic and probably social ripples that come out of all of this, that's going to affect not just China, not just Hong Kong, but it's going to affect the entire world.
Yeah, like I said, like I'm not a geopolitical expert, but what's going on right there. I mean, it's the current, Gen Z millennial Hong Kongers. They're the ones who are going to really bear the brunt of the ramifications of the whole British handoff to the Chinese government over the next few decades, because if I remember correctly, China is supposed to assume full control over Hong Kong by like 2048 or something like that.
Yeah.
And by that time, a lot of the people who are out there protesting, they'll be basically almost as old as boomers right now, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that directly affects them. I mean, this is probably a crude analogy, but imagine if you live in a pretty relatively free state, and within a decade or two, all the laws in your state have to mirror, like, say, California's laws, right? Crude analogy, but I would not want to live in that kind of shithole.
Yeah, absolutely not. And the thing about it is that's so crazy. Like you said, it's a crude analogy, but what the Hong Kongers are facing down is even worse, because Hong Kong is in a lot of ways just as, if not more, free than the United States, and having to go from that degree of freedom to whatever the fuck China's doing right now would be a social shift that I think that a lot of people just would not be prepared for. And honestly, they shouldn't have to do that. They're used to living their lives the way that they live. And you said 2048, 2047, around there, they still got 30 years left on this handover, and Xi Jinping, Chinese Winnie the Pooh, he wants it right fucking now. And nobody's saying anything. Nobody with any type of clout. The British aren't saying shit, and they're the ones with skin in this game. So what is up with that?
Sorry, I can you repeat your question again? I didn't really understand the intent of.
Oh, I'm saying that the British are the ones that are going to be handing Hong Kong over to China, but the official handoff date is in the late 2040s. And so right now you've got the Xi Jinping and the Chinese communists are like, no, we're not going to wait until the end of the 2040s. We want it right now. And as far as I know, the British government hasn't said shit to them. So, what's up with that?
Yeah, that's probably a little out of my scope of expertise, but I mean, let's that doesn't really surprise me at all. I mean, they've done. I mean, if I'm the UK, as cucked as that country is right now, considering like what you have to, they'll card you for buying like a fucking butter knife.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really expect anything more out of them?
No, no. No, it's just kind of throwing that question out there. No, you're absolutely right. The UK is less than a paper tiger at this point, and I think that even if the government had any type of opposition to the Chinese government swooping in and taking over Hong Kong, that they
You,
wouldn't have the power to do anything about it.
you know what's ironic is that you have people in Hong Kong flying the Union Jack, when in the UK people are trying like not to fly the Union Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty ironic.
Right, the UK is a fucking meme right now, and you brought up a perfect point. You got these people in UK universities talking about decolonizing math or some other dumb social justice bullshit like that. Meanwhile, you've got people in Hong Kong staring down the barrel of literal guns or flying the colonial flag of Hong Kong. It's unreal the amount of twisted irony that's going on in the world.
I mean, if you really if you want to put it in perspective, right? There's a lot of like pro-China, anti-Hong Kong shills, and actually a lot of them come from like the same cut as your typical social justice whiner, where they're saying that this is just an example of the Western media bullying China, and which has been a victim of colonialism for centuries. And yeah, sure, while that is true, if you look at what they've been doing recently, whether it's the disturbing influence of various state-owned companies, what have you, their forceful expansion into uh, the South China Sea, destroying coral reefs while building artificial islands. I mean, and their expanding influence in the African continent. You could probably make the argument that the roles are starting to be reversed, and China is starting to act like the colonizer.
Right, yeah, that's and the thing is that a lot of these people that do a lot of bitching about the past crimes of the West are they see this not as a problem, not as a conflict of ideology or anything. They see it as a kind of a about time, because a lot of these people, they seem to operate on a theory of some type of a karma referee is out there. It's like the West, the white world has been out there like oppressing people around the world, and now it's their time to oppress the Western world. And as soon as the Western world gets oppressed to the point that the rest of the world was being oppressed by the white world, then everything is going to level itself out, and we can live in some type of egalitarian harmony. And it's like, no, that's not how shit works. It's crazy the way some of these people operate.
If you want to hear some like level 60 mental gymnastics, uh, there was a dude today just like commenting on one of my posts, and he was talking about how uh, we shouldn't be supporting Hong Kong because apparently this guy says that he's claims to be on the alt right, and he supports any government that's against homosexuality and sexual deviancy of women. And it doesn't matter if they're like an Islamic country or a communist country. That's who he'll support. which I just find that like it's wow. Oof.
Pack it in, boys. We found the gold medal winner in the mental gymnastics. Might as well not even try. Jesus, that is. I mean, if you got your one issue, I understand there's one issue voters, but it's like, I'm going to support the totalitarian government that killed 100 million people in the last century because they hate the gays. That's a bridge too far for me. Oh, man. Yeah, but some people's kids, right? So is there, we kind of burned through the questions and everything that I had a little faster than I was hoping for. We're only a half an hour into this. So Ben, the guy on the other side, he wanted to know how a guy like you goes from running a funny meme page to shipping potential contraband to revolutionaries halfway around the world.
First off, I'd like to clarify for legal purposes that all items that have been ordered off Amazon are not export controlled. Just in case the Alphabet boys are watching.
Yeah.
Second of all, think of it this way, right? The whole Boogaloo / Big Igloo / Big Luau memes are like in fashion right now, right? And hell, you even have people dressed up in like Hawaiian shirts going to like fucking shooting matches.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, if you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, like if bad shit actually does happen here stateside, I mean, how could you be a reliable asset if you can't even, do something as simple as, write your congressman or, get involved early on the political process or, just, supporting pro freedom big boys, or in other areas where it's sorely needed. So it's kind of partially a social experiment too, just to see if the same people who laugh, react at, or create boog memes are willing to walk the walk. In Minecraft, of course.
Yeah. The boog memes are fun, and it's definitely a way to exercise your First Amendment, so that you hopefully
unless if you live in a red flag state, in which case the Alphabet Boys is gonna
right
seize your ass.
Yeah, that's that's the kind of creeping problem that we have these days coming up, is these red flag laws. Where was it at that one guy, he posted a meme that I've posted myself before?
Yeah, there's several. There was one that I've been posting about. It's this 18-year-old guy in Ohio, and then there's been a couple other cases. I think somewhere on the East Coast, as well as I think in Illinois. Some of these cases are kind of related. I don't know why, but like the FBI decided to just fucking troll iFunny and just go after a bunch of people. Yeah, it's weird because if you look at the court documents and if you look at some of the stuff that he's posted, right, it's basically the same kind of memes that you would see all the time, right? Like drawings of like autoseer specifications, stuff like that. And the thing is that if you look at the court documents, it's really the case they're trying to make is they're trying to glue together a bunch of circumstantial evidence to paint this person as someone who's going to like go blow up an abortion clinic, right? And regardless of what your beliefs are on abortion or what have you, and we could probably all agree that bombing a freaking clinic or posting memes about bombing a clinic is distasteful, but it's
Mhm.
distasteful speech that needs to be protected.
Right, absolutely. Somebody that I watch on YouTube put it very, very well the other day when he said that when you have speech like that, somebody out there making the argument to, bomb an abortion clinic or do any of the other stupid shit that some of these lunatics do, you're going to you're going to run into people that are like, no, this should be censored because what if someone takes it seriously and goes out and actually does it? Well, it's the thing is that rather than try to take on the impossible task of controlling everyone's speech, the best way to do it is to equip yourself with better speech in order to counter those bad things and make them out to be the ludicrous nonsense that they are. And yeah, you're going to run into the occasional nut from time to time that's not going to be dissuaded, but that's life. That is, you're going to have shitty people doing shitty things. And the best thing to do is to just equip yourself to defend against it. Same thing with gun rights. You're going to get the occasional wacko that goes out and shoots up someplace, but the best way to do it is not to control everybody's right to keep and bear arms. It's to just equip yourself in the event that the worst case happens.
So I'm not a lawyer, but I think that the fundamental misunderstanding that a lot of people have with the Bill of Rights in the United States Constitution is that every amendment is the Bill of Rights serves to protect, the citizenry from things that are considered. It's to protect distasteful or unpopular or minority opinions.
Right.
And you know what? If you closely examine each amendment in the Bill of Rights, that's pretty much the logical conclusion that needs to be made. I mean, let's go in order, right? If you look at the First Amendment, right? People say, "Oh, it obviously on the surface level, people say, "Oh, yeah, it protects free speech," right? But think of it this way: if I go on a street corner and with a poster and I yell out, you know, uh, people who kick dogs are terrible people, right?
Right.
Or people who commit animal abuse are terrible people. Most, if not everybody's going to agree with that. So if I'm saying something that is popular and agreeable, it doesn't necessarily need protection
Right.
because it's already inherently protected. Now, if I go on a street corner and I say, "Oh, God hates gay people," right? Well, that's unpopular speech, at least these days, right? And
Mhm.
yes, and it's distasteful, but it's that kind of speech that needs to be protected because it's unpopular. And if you look at the rest of the amendments 2 through 10, especially the ones that you know cover criminal justice, like the prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment, the right to a speedy trial, and stuff like that, those types of amendments protect, in essence, criminals, right?
Right.
And laws that protect criminals, that's considered unpopular and distasteful in the public eye, but it deserves protection because of that, because it's the minority opinion.
Right, exactly. It's like after 9/11, if we didn't have those types of protection and due process and rights to speedy trial, how many Muslims or people that just look like they might be Middle Eastern would have been dragged out in the street and given a public hanging. It's just like that. That it wasn't popular. People were like, oh, kill all the Middle Easterners. It's like, let's just pump the brakes on the genocide here real quick and just
Right.
remember that we have a Bill of Rights for a reason.
Right. And if we continue with the train of logic that the Bill of Rights is meant to protect the minority of the
Mhm.
citizenry, then when you examine the Second Amendment, it becomes fairly obvious that it is meant to protect, the people from oppression, right?
Right.
And whether it's from a tyrannical government or whether it's from, mob justice or what have you. And that's the thing, that's the part that a lot of people don't get, is that the Bill of Rights serves to protect the minority, not the majority, because the majority inherently are already protected.
Yes, simply by virtue of being the majority. Yeah, you are spot on with that analysis. I'd take it a step further. People when they're arguing about what do you need X type of gun for, it's like that's just useful for killing people or anything like that. It's like, well, let's just examine this from a logical point here. It's like, if I have a jacked up pickup truck that I use to go driving around in the mud, what is the purpose of that truck? Most people will be like, oh, it's to go drive around in the mud. And it's like, no. Whether I have a jacked up pickup truck or a Prius, the purpose is to convey me from point A to point B. And that's it. A jacked up pickup truck, could I use it as a daily driver? Yes, absolutely. Would it be ideal for that? No, probably not. Reverse is true for a Prius. Can I use it to go in the mud? Yeah, I won't get very far. It wouldn't be ideal for it, but I can do that. Now apply that same logic to firearms. I say that the when you boil it down to its very base, the point of firearms in the hands of the citizenry is individual freedom. Freedom from hunger. You can use a firearm to hunt. Freedom from property rights infringement. You can use your firearm to defend your house. Freedom from tyranny. All of these things. It boils down. The Second Amendment is a fundamental protection on individual liberty.
You're preaching to the choir here. The issue with those kinds of arguments is that when you try to use those arguments with people who just fundamentally are not on the same page as you are, because their philosophy, their philosophical values is just, and their basic moral compass is wired so that there's a fundamental disagreement, a fundamental conflict between how they see the world and how you and I see the world.
Right.
Making the philosophical argument and the liberty-minded or the constitutional argument on the Second Amendment is really just going to fall on deaf ears, because then after that they'll either resort to, oh, you must be crazy, blah blah blah, the government has drones, blah 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 blah, and then in which the default answer is to use the welcome to the rice fields motherfucker gif.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's a lot of people out there who say, if you come across people who are graboids or anti-gun people, and they say, oh, you don't need blah blah blah, you have to deconstruct it to them in a logical manner and explain it to them. And you know what? Honestly, I've been trying to do that for the longest time, and I honestly don't believe it works, because they're never going to believe you.
No.
Like if somebody goes up to you and says, I don't think you need an AR-15. AR-15s are only meant for mass murders, right? And if you go up to them and say, well, technically AR-15s are not actually an M16 because it's not fully automatic and blah, 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 blah. And people use this for self-defense and people use this for sport and people use it for hunting. Their eyes are just going to fucking gloss over, because I believe that they are not, they do not come into the conversation with good faith.
No.
Right. They are out there to make arguments that can be said in one short sentence or under 150 characters, which I think was Twitter back in the day.
Yeah, they're soundbite arguers.
And so, honestly, for those kinds of people, there's really only two ways that I think can be used to really address their argument. And this is in case you come against one of those moms demand action screechers in real life. You double down on your argument, and if they say, yeah, AR-15s are only meant for killing. Sorry, I'm drinking a beer, so I'm like super burpy right now.
Yeah, I just got done with one too.
AR-15s are only good for killing, blah blah blah. Okay, and I mean, I mean, you're right. I mean, they are fundamentally based off of and a very effective tool that was, purchased and fielded by the military.
Yeah.
And you need something that's effective at that job in order to defend your life, liberty, and property. Right.
Right.
So this whole trying to walk back by saying, oh, it's not actually a tool for killing, blah 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 blah. That's basically you're backing yourself into a corner.
Right. You're
And
ceding ground to them. You're getting
yeah,
yourself on the back foot.
exactly. And instead, I would say that you should double down on the argument, right?
Right.
Yeah, sure. Call it whatever you want. It's a weapon of war, but that's because they're very effective at what they do for the purposes of self-defense or community defense or national defense.
Right.
The second alternative is just ignore their arguments directly and meme/schmuck the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Which I find to be equally, if not more effective. Unfortunately, that political discourse has come to this.
Yeah. Where we throw memes at each other and may the best meme lord win, and where I guess we're just lucky that
we just our political arguments have devolved to just tagging sassy tag groups and seeing which person can tag the sassiest tag group.
I think Nathan will get a kick out of that if he's listening right now, because I think he just created 3 sassy tag groups.
Yeah,
the other day.
that's one of the reasons why I created one, which if for those who don't know is sounds like you're giving shitty opinions on guns. Can you shut the fuck up?
Yep. I haven't seen that one yet, but I definitely will go look it up after we're done here. So let's rewind to what you were talking about there towards the beginning of this part of the conversation, where you were talking about the good old the government has drones and jets and tanks and blah blah blah. And we don't have to go all the way back to the rice paddies, motherfucker. We can go straight to, I think it was last week, when a group of sicarios down in Sinaloa decided that they were going to shut down the Mexican army in order to rescue two guys.
The Jalisco cartel.
Yeah. To rescue El Chapo's boys. They shut down the Federales, and they brought in the army, and they shut down the army too. Yeah. And I don't think that those guns were semi-automatic ARs and AKs that were smuggled across the border from the United States. Yeah. I think they had.
Yeah, can you let me know which border town sells RPGs and full auto M249 saws? Because I wanna pay that shop a visit.
Yeah,
unless Texas Machine Gun and Ordnance has been doing some dealing on the side that we don't know about.
Yeah, they've definitely been posting some spicy content lately, at least as far as a gun shop goes. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, Mexico is like the prime example, right? Whenever you have someone that says, "Oh, well, blah blah blah, look at this country. They don't have guns and they don't have any violent crime." Well, I mean, it's not. It all depends, right? If you have a country in which you have a very well-financed social safety net system and everybody's happy and everybody's gainfully employed, right? And nobody is, down enough to start doing heroin or whatever, yeah, you're probably not going to have as much crime. But if you live in a country that has a high level of corruption, right, and despite gun control laws, the criminal cartels seem to, be able to steal federal ordnance by the truckload, then yeah, it's not going to work. And it's funny, and every time I read about Mexican cartel violence, for some reason it always reminds me back to when I was in college, and I was sitting in this session where this person who was a intern from Canada was talking about why she wanted to volunteer for this pro-gun control group on campus. And she said the most hilariously ignorant thing I've ever heard, which is, in Canada, we don't have any gun crime because we don't have any guns. in which my bullshit meter immediately went off because I'm pretty sure the firearms ownership rate in Canada is like around 25%. So it's really those kinds of people, the very massively uninformed folks who get their information from terribly created memes from Occupy Democrats. That's how they get their information. Those are the kind of people who we're up against. And honestly, I have yet to meet a very well-spoken Moms Demand Action activist who actually knew what they were talking about.
Well, none of them do because none of them want to.
I mean, no, but seriously, like if you Sons of Liberty Gunworks, they participated in a town hall in San Antonio where they were talking about gun violence prevention measures, and Moms Demand Action had a presence there, and you can just tell like how flustered they were at the presence of so many pro-gun people in the audience. It's a glorious video. You have to watch it.
I will go look it up as soon as we're done here. Going back to what you said, Mexico is not just a case study in what happens when you have corruption. It's a kind of a way to get a canary in the coal mine type of moment, and what could happen here given enough time and enough corruption and enough bureaucratic creep. And what a lot of people don't know is that Mexico does have an equivalent of the Second Amendment in their own constitution. And the way that they get around having the massive amount of gun control that they do is they say, oh, you can buy a gun in Mexico. The only problem is that through local zoning restrictions and permits and all of the other bureaucratic red tape, there is precisely one gun store in Mexico. It's in Mexico City, and it's in the headquarters building on an army base. So yes, it's technically possible for you to buy a gun in Mexico, but good luck finding the place. And that's the sort of thing that could very well happen here if the bureaucrats and the regulators and the graboids and all the other wackos in the civilian disarmament industrial complex could get their way. They can't go and outright abolish the Second Amendment, but they can, through little pieces and patchwork regulations, make the Second Amendment so impossible to practice that people are just going to be like, fuck it, it's not worth it, whatever.
I would say that probably the most surefire way to ensure that we don't get any crazy gun laws like quote unquote assault weapons ban getting put in the books in the next few years is so I think over the past decade, the gun ownership rate in the United States went from like a 90 guns per 100 people to 100 guns per 100 people, so one gun per person.
Mm-hmm.
The higher we increase that ratio, the less likely we will be able to see some kind of massive overhaul and like negative overhaul in the gun laws, because at that, the more firearms that's in the hands of civilians, the more people are going to realize that we have surpassed critical mass, and that any type of gun restrictions at this point are probably going to be useless, and that you're probably better off seeking alternative measures.
Right, absolutely. I try every chance I get to normalize firearms in my day-to-day life. I wear gun t-shirts. More often than not, I'm wearing camouflage pants, and I look like a fucking dweeb, but it gets people to come up and ask me questions. It's like, hey, you into guns? Were you in the army? What do you think about X, Y, and Z? And I'm just like, yeah. And then I try to open up a dialogue, a conversation, be courteous, be kind, try to break down that image that the media and Hollywood and everything has sort of built around gun owners, that we're all just unhinged lunatics just looking for a reason. A lot of times when I open carry, and I make an effort to smile, look people in the eye, stand up straight, be as courteous and kind as possible, for that very same reason, to break those barriers down.
Yeah, I mean, I used to wear camel pants all the time too, but then I turned 13. Sorry,
So yeah,
just throwing some shade over there. No, but
it's
but
fine.
seriously, like in a nutshell, probably one of the most effective things you can do is probably buy a 10-pack of those poverty pony receivers, or if you want to be a high roller, buy a 10-pack of those LMT Mars L ambidextrous lowers for $260 a pop for a strip lower, so you can really
Mm.
flex on the pores.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm one of those poors. I can barely afford one poverty pony, let alone a 10-pack. Jesus Christ.
No, but
Yeah,
like in essence, the more we normalize AR-15s and other perceived to be controversial rifles, the less of a controversial item they start to become. So when you start seeing like FUD hunters start to use AR type rifles for hunting, that's a good sign. When Remington released I think the R15 and the R25, what have you, was very FUD looking AR-15 and some stupid ass mossy oak pattern.
yeah.
But you know what? If even the FUDs start using those platforms, then we're moving the needle forward in a positive manner.
Right, and kind of expanding on what you just said there, if you go out and you buy a 10-pack of poverty ponies and put them together into functioning rifles, it's good to have the gun ownership rate approach one gun per one person in the United States, but it's even better to make that a reality. I would say, following all laws, we have people that watch this show from all over the country, but following all laws and local regulations, if you take somebody out shooting, and if they like what they've seen, gift a gun to somebody if they're a responsible person. It doesn't do anybody good to have 10 AR-15s in a rifle rack like I've got right behind my computer over there when your neighbors around you don't have an AR-15 of their own. You got to kind of spread the love.
Yeah, I would even say that one of the hidden gems in the gun owning community are left-leaning gun groups. To an extent, right? There's Liberal Gun Club, there's Pink Pistols, and I would say that they're necessary in the sense that they're introducing firearms and Second Amendment advocacy to people who traditionally think are kind of not used to that concept, right?
Right.
And even if those groups start turn antis into FUDs, that's still moving the needle forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have my own gripes with those groups because I don't completely agree with all of their political stances, but what they're doing is they're trying to make Second Amendment advocacy a bipartisan issue, and that is probably the most comprehensive way to get the threat of gun control off the radar.
Right. Yeah. They're trying to even condense it down, not so much as a bipartisan issue, but they're trying to condense it down to guns are for white people, and they've been doing that for the longest time. It's if you're black and you're caught with a gun, the cops are going to shoot you. If you're gay, gays don't have guns, or if you're any type of minority, whether it's an ethnic minority or a sexual minority or any of these other minorities out there, no, guns are bad. Guns are for just those evil straight white men, and you don't want anything to do with that. You want to come over here and you want to be on the gun control team. And you are right. Some of these left-leaning gun advocacy groups are doing a good job in this one particular area of kind of spreading that message around. I think it was by photographer Oleg Volk. He's a kind of a famous gun photographer, and he posted a thing up where it was like a lesbian couple holding guns that said "Armed gays don't get bashed." And I think that I've seen that thing spread around for years. It pops up every now and again, and it's probably one of the most poignant ways to get that point across. It's the guns are for everybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and despite the fact that I probably disagree with 80% of everything else that left-leaning / liberal gun groups believe in politically, I think on at least the Second Amendment side, they deserve everybody's support.
Yes, absolutely. And there's that. An armed society is a polite society, so while everybody is armed, you may disagree on 80% of the other things that they may believe in, but you can sit down and have a good conversation because you know that everybody is going to be polite. Maybe you can find some middle ground.
You know who doesn't deserve our support? Wayne LaPierre.
You know what? I was kind of hoping that we'd get more time to shit on the NRA. They are absolutely terrible, and they have become nothing more than a GOP mouthpiece and a police apology group. But we're running up on an hour right now, and I would love to sit down and talk with you again sometime. This was very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for having me. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
absolutely. And I hope that our little bit of reach here, last minute and everything, get some people who didn't know what you were up to with the Hong Kong thing. I just want to get that message out to as many people as I can. Like I said, I hope that you can sit down with us again sometime. We can shit on the NRA and shit on the ATF and any of the other alphabet boys a little more in depth, and we can talk about the philosophical niceties behind guns and stuff. So we have a couple of comments here we'll get to before we sign off. Mercedes says, be the Oprah of guns. Everyone gets a gun. Absolutely. Yes. Stephen Davila says, Oleg is awesome. He's a good LGBT ally. Okay, I'll take your word for it. And he also said some nice memes from Venezuela were good to show why we need to not be disarmed in lefty groups. Yes, absolutely. There were a lot of lefties that were following what was going on in Venezuela and watching the slow creep of communism turn into the slow creep of armored vehicles over protesting crowds was enough to make people say,
But
maybe I should buy
Hobbs,
a...
that wasn't real communism.
No, it's, I
Real
tried to,
communism hasn't been tried yet.
right, I tried to put one of my dogs on the moon the other night with my backyard space program, but it failed miserably, so that wasn't a real space program.
Yeah, I know we're coming up on time.
That's how it works.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, although I post on Instagram a little less at Gun Grubbing Memes, just because they have some bullshit requirements on pixel image ratios that I can't always comply with. But yeah, like, follow, and subscribe.
All right, you guys heard it there. Also, are you doing the hashtag Hong Kong Bing Bong on Twitter, or is that just something that you post up because putting hashtags in front of shit is cool?
You know what? I don't think I'll ever be able to get a blue check mark on Twitter, so I don't even try.
Okay.
So this is just something I'm keeping on Facebook, just because that I have the most number of the biggest audience there. Truth be told, I actually stole this hashtag off of a gun group, so it wasn't an original idea. So I completely plagiarized this idea, like how China steals our IP.
Well, you're kind of preaching on a show that is very heavily involved in the Libertarian Party, and a lot of people in the LP take exception to IP laws. I personally don't, but a lot of people do. But everybody, you heard the man. That is gun grabbing memes for the tacticool scene on Facebook and Instagram, and of course, we are the Roads to Liberty crew at Roads to Liberty. Roads, the number 2, Liberty.com. We're also on Facebook, Minds, Instagram, SoundCloud, Anchor, a whole bunch of other podcasts. Tune in next week. I'm hoping to line up a very special guest. I will not drop anything prematurely on that, though. But thank you for joining us tonight for this very last minute Hobbservations. I'm Hobbs. These were my observations. Thank you all, and have a wonderful night.
Taxation is theft.